Okay, this is the best model of Pearl Harbor I have ever seen, and it's here at the War Museum of the Pacific in Fredericksburg. And fortunately, there's a lot of sunlight coming in here. We want to cover some stuff that I've covered in other videos, but so there was an exercise a couple of years before Pearl Harbor where they and military wants to do this for it's a feedback loop for information. They launched an attack on themselves. It was a mock drill, but there was a Japanese observer. Let's call him an observer. He was a Japanese spy that saw what happened, and he reported how good it was, I guess, for want of a better term, how easy it was, and how much damage would be inflicted. Now, the man that designed the Pearl Harbor attack, I believe he recently passed away, but he ran with the ball after that. Now, there was at Hickam Airfield, that was made into like a turkey shoot. So they were worried. The commander of the field was worried about spies, so he grouped all the planes close together so that they could be watched. So when the bomb hit, one bomb would take out about 20 aircraft because there would be fuel in the jet in the planes, and they would catch fire. So that further screwed everything up. Now here you see a Battleship Row. Now, it's always been my contention that Roosevelt wanted Pearl Harbor, the attack. He left it open so that we could get involved in World War II. Remember, he ran on keeping us out of the war, so he knew to get us in the war there had to be something that would outrage the citizenry. When the people are behind you, you can do almost anything, but when they're against you, you can't do anything. So he kind of encouraged this attack. Now, the third wave was broken off because there were no, the carriers were not in they were out looking for the Japanese. But the third wave was supposed to get the carriers and these fuel tanks. See these fuels? And now if they would have gotten those, that would have probably caused us to lose Midway, because it would have taken a long time to set up a fuel depot. And so this was the best survivors of Pearl Harbor. Now let's go over a little bit about Battleship Row. So you see Battleship Row here. They didn't have time to respond. If they would have had about 2 hours, they could have gotten out to sea. They would have engaged. They still wouldn't have been prepared, and they would have lost a whole lot more people because the Japanese fleet was ready. They had trained for it, and the losses would have been, instead of less than 3,000, it probably would have been 15,000. Now remember, we did lose 3 ships, but they refloated the rest of them. And see how close they are to Ford Island here, and all the other ships. When and obviously some people were caught and died from shrapnel and whatnot, but you could have swam to shore from here. A lot of guys did. And it's always been my contention, if you're going to get beat up, get beat up in a hospital. That way they can treat you fast. So they refloated all but 3 of the ships, and all the refloats were actually in service before the end of the war. And so if you're going to get beat up in an emergency room. And that's what happened to our battleships there. Like I said, this is a real great model here. But see how close they are to the shore. If they would have engaged out in the ocean, yes, they would have taken down a few Japanese ships, but the losses would have been catastrophic. None of the ships probably would have come back, or maybe only 2 would have escaped, and the loss of life would have been an order of magnitude higher probably. And anyway, so Roosevelt got the war that he wanted. Remember, he ran it as a peace, keep us out of the war. and he, started. Japan and us were on edge anyway, and he just pushed it over. But that gave us the excuse to go to war. And then remember, as soon as it happened, Churchill popped open a bottle of champagne and said, "We're going to win the war now. The Americans are in." So anyway, the History Channel did a recreation of what would have happened if they'd have had an hour to prepare for the attack. And you can look it up. It's pretty interesting. We would have bloodied them a little bit, but they would have just decimated it. But anyway, the third wave would have gotten the fuel tanks, which would have put off our ability to defend Midway. So that was the big plus the lives that were saved because they could just jump off the ship. Thank you. I'm out.